we've got Kyle Shanahan against Dan Quinn. If you polled 32 GMs, who has the advantage? What do you think the number would be? Mike Sando.
I think it would skew relatively high, close to 32-0, Kyle Shanahan. It's been fun to watch Dan Quinn because he got fired last year, kind of just resurrect his career. He wears a backwards hat. You see him on the one game McCarthy missed with COVID. I forget what was that, Thursday night? Maybe it was a Monday night. Maybe it was Sunday night. I thought it was definitely a primetime game. He's a bundle of energy. But it almost feels like people forgot that as the Falcons fell apart and became a disaster on his watch, it was like, how is your defense so terrible? Aren't you a defensive guy? And he was getting crushed of like, he doesn't know anything for defense. Remember, they had a moment where they took all their position coaches at all the positions and they just threw them into a hat. And they just picked them out and guys started coaching different positions. They
Pretty
were that
inspired.
That
would happen at the NFL level is insane. Because didn't Raheem Morris become like the running backs coach or something?
I thought he went from the wide receiver coach to the defensive coordinator or something.
Coordinator.
So, but it was like that's how desperate they were. And Dan, who again, people say he's a nice, high character guy. He's the type guy you root for. People love that have been around him. But he is not viewed as like until this year when it's like Micah Parsons kicking everyone's ass, as a dynamic defensive scheme guy. So, I mean, that was always the knock on him in Atlanta. So now Kyle, who is just going to have some unique insight because when he worked for him and the way practice works is, now I know, Dan Quinn I don't think was the defensive coordinator then, but he's on the defensive side of the ball. That Kyle and the defensive coordinator and Dan Quinn, like when they're getting ready for practice, they do practice scripts. Like you just philosophically end up spending a lot of time talking football and knowing what he likes, knowing what he doesn't. He's literally, they'll practice against him for multiple years, right? In his looks and what he wants it to look like. So now that's years ago, but it's not nothing. And Kyle naturally is just, I mean, he has an advantage whoever he's playing. We saw it last week when Kyle kind of got rolling in the second half and that stretch where he runs the 10 straight runs. And I have a hard time seeing, because here's the thing, like Dan Quinn is not the head coach, but we know, as we saw last year when Mike Nolan was the defensive coordinator, Mike McCarthy knows nothing about like the defense. You can't even really blame him for the defense. It's like, does he hire the right guy? Like last year, Mike McCarthy's fault in 2020 with the Cowboys was that he hired Mike Nolan.
Right.
Their defense sucked. That's on Mike Nolan because McCarthy has nothing to do with it. But he hired the wrong guy. This year, it looked like he hired a guy that just inspired the group. But you watch him against the Cardinals, is it more of an inspired group play than more like defensive schematics? Because I just see number 11 flying all over the place. Randy Gregory's back, who, battled forever with the marijuana laws in the league. That guy is a very, very athletic individual. And then Lawrence, the Boise State guy, I think had a broken foot or something this year, and he only ended up playing the second half of the year. He's pretty talented too. So they got the defensive rookie of the year and then two other pass rushers. If you just have three pass rushers, we see it with the Niners. Now, their linebackers with the Niners are better than the Cowboys. Like Van Der Esch is not going to be able to cover Debo or, Elijah Mitchell. That's just not going to be his thing. But if those defensive linemen cause havoc, then you can throw everything else off.
Yeah. I think it's by the way, I mean, the one thing in hindsight, I didn't realize at the time, Raheem Morris, I'd forgotten he did the McVay podcast.
Yeah.
With Schrager, him and Tomlin. And he talked about how he went to Atlanta. He became the pass game coordinator, even though he'd been a defensive coach the whole time. And he learned offense. Raheem
Maybe that's what he was, defensive coordinator, and then they moved him to wide receivers.
No. He went there, took this crazy job. It's like he's a defensive coach. He became like an offensive coach for the Falcons and stayed an offensive coach for like 3 or 4 years.
Because someone told him you should do that to help your career out.
And so it's less crazy that he became the defensive coordinator because that's what he is a defensive coach.
Not that crazy at all. It just sounds crazy when they pull it out of a hat.
Yeah,
it's not really pulling it out of a hat. Honestly, that might have been a hyped up story then.
But it was every coach change jobs.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It is still crazy for your remember when Luis Castillo going from offensive line coach to, was it Luis Castillo?
No, that isn't Louis. Is that the guy that hit the game-winning hit off Mariano Rivera?
No, that's Juan. That's Juan Gonzalez. Luis Castillo was a second baseman though, and for like the Marlins.
Are you sure it's not Luis Gonzalez?
Oh, Luis Gonzalez. Yeah. Thank you.
It's Juan Castillo.
Juan Castillo. I got all those names together. I figured it out. Went from O-line coach to DC for Andy in Philly. So it's not quite
bad
that,
move.
But
bad move.
Yeah, bad move. But you make it, John. You throw enough passes, you'll throw a pick now and then. Whatever. You got to take some chances. My point is, I think Kyle's better at what he does than Dan Quinn is at what he does. I think Kyle's one of the best at what he does. Right. Just if I'm talking about coordinator matchup. A. B. I think if you have a situation where two coordinators know each other, I don't think we can universally say the offensive guy always has the advantage, because in theory, the offense always has the first advantage in that they make the first move.
I call the play. Yeah.
I call the play. But
you react.
Some of the best defensive coordinators are the ones that create, you don't even get to make your first move, right? Dick LeBeau, I'm going to make it so overwhelming for you that you don't ever get to dictate terms. I dictate terms to you as a defense. But it's a little harder to dictate terms as a defense than it is for an offense. If all your personnel is equal, right? As in college, where your personnel sometimes isn't equal. So I think Kyle just has the basic advantage there. Then the other coordinator matchup's really interesting too. I mean, Kellen Moore's been calling offense longer than D'Amico Ryan's been calling defense, and D'Amico obviously played in the league much longer than Kellen played. But both guys are in a pretty new spot. Like for both of them, it's a pretty massive week, right? Mike McCarthy's been here before. Kyle Shanahan's been here before. Dan Quinn's been here before. D'Amico has never called defense in a playoff game. And Kellen Moore has never called offense in a playoff game, right?
No.
So it's a pretty fascinating matchup.
Do you know that D'Amico Ryan, who when I think about D'Amico Ryan, I think of a young guy, is 4 years older than Kellen Moore? Kellen Moore's 33 years old.
Which is young.
Very
But D'Amico's young. D'Amico, because D'Amico
played in the NFL.
Right?
He played in the NFL a lot longer. D'Amico was 06. Like D'Amico, like Kellen, immediately got into coaching when he was done playing. The difference is D'Amico
like
had
Richard Sherman.
11-year NFL career. Richard's into coaching now?
Richard tweeted he's looking forward to coaching. I don't think he's on the playoff roster or this week.
Seriously?
He's like, I'll be coaching. I'm excited to coach as much as I can, I think was what I just saw him tweet.
Wow.
Didn't go how I wanted, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to strap it up again. Look forward to continuing this journey with my teammates and coaching my butt off. Thank you all for the support this season. Maybe maybe an injury just got announced with him is how that reads. Right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry. I interrupted your point on D'Amico and Kellen.
It's just pretty wild those guys that those two guys are so young coordinators. Like if you just had to bet like $500, will they both get opportunities to be head coaches in their life? Obviously, Kellen's already been getting asked to be interviewed, but
I would bet yes.
Is D'Amico that far away?
I don't think he is. I think it's gone pretty well this year, especially given some of the issues at cornerback created by some of the personnel decisions the Niners made in the offseason. But I think we see some light at the end of the tunnel for that group. And he's going to coach for a coach that wins. Like the Niners are just in the playoff mix, right? What if this is a moment for D'Amico.
You know where Kyle gets lucky is his defensive coordinator. If it was flipped, he would just lose guys faster. Like if he was a defensive coordinator,
yeah,
and his offensive guys, but his defensive coordinator, because Kyle's the offensive guy, like teams don't really hire defensive coordinators to be your head coach.
Well, the Broncos might do it 2 years in a row, but you're right. And that's why you hire offensive coaches, is because if you're worried about your quarterback.
But would Dan Quinn be hired as a head coach if he hadn't previously been a head coach? To me, that makes him pretty valuable. Like if he had just bounced around as a defensive coordinator, I don't know if he would interview.
Maybe.
I think part of his value is like he was a head coach of a team that made a Super Bowl. Guys, they are on their second chance, typically do better. I think that value he brings. I have head coaching experience. I think Todd Bowles falls under that too. And that's where I think it gets hard sometimes, where people talk themselves out of a Brian Daboll, a Kellen Moore. Like, we don't really want to mess with a guy that's inexperienced.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it probably does help him. But I do think But I also think part of it depends, like, even if he didn't get a job this year, is the Cowboys going to make a playoff run? Are they, how do you perform on big stages? Like the Niners went to the Super Bowl. So I think that's part of it, right, with Robert Saleh. His defense was dominant. Is DeMeco Ryans' defense going to hold the Cowboys to 19 points on Sunday? You know what I mean? Like, it is a moment where DeMeco can – I think we've been following him, and we think it's going well, but it is a moment where he can kind of stamp himself as a candidate just with one game.
Yeah, big time. I mean, because Robert Saleh really kicked ass and took names in that Super Bowl run, right? And then he did. I think he got one interview during that time, and he became a star the following year when their team wasn't winning that many games, right? But remember, he interviewed with everybody. He was what felt like the number one candidate last year, didn't it? I mean, everyone wanted to interview Robert Saleh.
You're right, because didn't he do 5 interviews, turn down 1, or 4 interviews, turn down 1?
He was turning down interviews at that point in time. So
well, it's kind of
I think both those two guys, a big moment for their careers, right? Hey, remember when DeMeco held the Cowboys at 18 points and the Niners won 30-18? Or hey, remember when Kellen Moore outscored Kyle Shanahan 35-30 and the Cowboys fucking beat the 49ers? This is kind of how did Kyle Shanahan become a dude with Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl run? Won the MVP, and then he just carried it into the playoffs. Just kept scoring points. And he scored points
if you were interviewing Kyle Shanahan after that Super Bowl, would the performance in the Super Bowl have been 100% a negative, 100% a positive, or a percentage of the two? It'd be a percentage of the two, and the percentage would be more impressive that you scored all these points against Bill Belichick than it would be a negative that your team blew the game, right? I think for me, to me, watching that Super Bowl, I know you would rather win the game, but in terms of evaluating Kyle Shanahan, I think it told you more good things about Kyle Shanahan than it did bad things about him.
Agreed.